we have that was given to us by the Resource Management Group, and that's to go through what they call resource management strategies in the California Water Plan and decide which ones this work group is going to focus on. And we were given advice or direction yesterday from the Regional Management Group to not wander all over into everybody else's pool and dig around in all these resource management strategies. We know everything's hooked to everything else, but this work group is going to be primarily responsible for some core strategies, and then recognizing that there's overlap with other groups in their work, and that's why we're going to have those integration workshops. And as we develop projects, the coordinators will be going back and forth trying to pull these packages together into integrated projects that have a much better chance of securing funding than an individual project here and there that isn't related to anything else. So that's the logic of starting with the California Water Plan and what they're suggesting we do to look at resource management strategies. Our plan by the guidelines has to address the ones that we pick. So when you're looking through this, you're looking for strategies that fit this region, and particularly strategies that you, with your expertise and your interest in forests and uplands, want to really focus on.
So if I might just, you're the last group to do these, and I call this the fun part of the first meeting because what I've seen in the 3 previous meetings is a pretty good engagement into all these. You're going to look at them one by one and discuss them. You're also going to see how they interlace. And what we found the first couple of work groups is they were almost wanted to address all of them. And we're going to ask you to really try to prioritize the top 6, maybe a little less, that you want to address. So the exercise last week, there were a lot of maybes, and there were some definitely yeses, and then they went back through it again. Again, this is what I call the fun part of this meeting because these are pretty eye-opening as we go through them.
Okay, so these strategies address these objectives, and we struggled yesterday with the leadership group on what's a goal, what's an objective, and what's a strategy. It's a painful process, but ideally you go from goals, objectives, strategies, and then projects that fit all those things. So we're kind of jumping into the objectives laid out in the California Water Plan, which is our guiding document for this whole effort. And their overall objectives for any resource management activities that we undertake in California would be to accomplish one or more of these basic objectives. And then the strategies go into a lot more detail about how you might actually accomplish these objectives. So am I making sense so far? This is kind of the bigger picture part of it. Okay, and then our job is to figure out which ones we're going to prioritize and how we're going to use those strategies that we picked, make them real for this area, because when we get into this thing, you'll see a column that has the strategy listed, then it has a big description, then it gets into examples of how this strategy might be applied. Well, the examples are statewide, so a lot of them just really don't fit here. But over time in our plan, I think we're going to have a much tighter nexus between those big objectives and the strategies and what we think they mean in this watershed. But that's not accomplished at this point, as you will see. Okay, and then, oh wait, we're not going into, where are they?
You need to pull up a Word document. You don't have that?
I don't think I have it.
Okay, well you can refer to the...
Okay, well, you have to get into your handouts then. Usually they have them up on the screen, which is a lot easier.
You can switch the folder over to mine and I can pull them up.
Okay, okay, but they're in your handout for you to look at, and we're also going to put them up on the screen for you to look at. And I'm glad to have...
Can I comment or ask a question? I think Ben's comment about the other adjacent regional plans and what they're doing, and maybe at the next meeting or something, we can have a list, someone can look up what some of those issues they're addressing, that we might also be able to make sure we're tied in here.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Is that something, I mean, at least because we're just kind of guessing which ones we want to pick, and some of them are similar, but it might help us focus if we knew that the adjacent IRWM was doing the same kind of issue in forestry.
Now, I know that UMA was looking at the resource management strategies and other plans, because the great thing we get by being last is we get to look at everybody else's other things, especially things that were approved by DWR, got an A on the scorecard.
That would be
And-
one we wanted to mark on.
Yeah, the ones we want to copy the most.
Prioritize that, right?
But what we noticed is the resource management strategies are new. They're in this 2013 plan, and the other
Nobody
documents
else
are
has
pretty
done it.
flat on them. They didn't get into these. And so it's kind of one way that we can actually take being so late and dig between how a strategy fits a project and really show that. And
Just a comment that we
Yeah,
might
no,
want
I
to
appreciate
consider
it.
at the next meeting and
Yeah,
help us,
okay,
and maybe
let's-
let the other adjacent.
Yes, on it.
Yeah, I would be, well, especially with you with your other experience in these other workgroups, you can help us.
So there is an advantage to being last sometimes.
That's what I keep telling myself. It means you can be first later.
So we kind of want to go through the definition, and we want to talk about each one, because I think that they all kind of relate in a way. You're not going to say yes to all of them. Obviously, this is agricultural, water use efficiency. And so Leah, kind of read the definition.
Okay, so as you know, we have an agricultural land stewardship group, and they're certainly going to focus on this, but the efficient management of water resources for beneficial uses, which is a water board term, right, Ben? It's in the basin plan that there's these beneficial uses that are designated, and agriculture is one. In our system, it's what? Agriculture, it's hydroelectric, it's municipal, it's ecosystem.
Yeah.
What are the other ones?
Habitat, cold water fisheries.
Cold water fisheries. We have a number of uses that are already designated for us in the basin plan. And so that's what they're talking about when they say beneficial uses. And so what this resource management strategy is talking about is managing water for improving those beneficial uses, not just agriculture, but the other ones listed in the basin plan, preventing waste and accomplishing additional benefits with the same amount of water. That's
Could I make another comment?
sure.
The reason why I stress that SIP reading is because in there it defines what each work group's area of interest would be for these tasks. And you get down to the meadows, forestry has a certain area of that they should be focusing on. And the work group that I'm with has an area that it focuses on. That's why I was kind of stressing reading the SIP, because it defines a lot of this stuff that you don't see in these tables.
Okay, so, oh, that's right, you're doing it. You're scrolling.
So are you going to just go
So
through
then
each one?
I'd like to follow
or
on.
Make a decision on each one as you
Yeah.
go, or?
Let's make a decision on each one.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mike?
I have a question then, given Carl's observation, was this locally generated, was this by you, or was this something that was provided to us and you embellished, enhanced, whatever?
We generated it based on the DWR grant agreement and the guidelines for the property for.
Ag use, water efficiency.
Is that something this work group wants to focus on? Yes, no, maybe?
Well, the second one, the second bullet on the right, water management is clearly what forestry's involved in, and so it's of high interest to us, what happens in that area. The rest are somewhat lower interest.
Well, okay, so you bring up a good point. We're gonna get to forestry and they'll talk about the same thing there.
Yeah.
And so we understand that we have to accomplish some of those same water management, but more in the forest sector, not the agricultural sector. But, you know, some forest landowners have agricultural lands and forest lands, okay? That's a group of people that would be interested in both of these and how they might hook, for an example.
Well, I think it's a very good point to look at what these all are, so you can kind of understand the bigger picture of what everybody's looking at here. And I look at that one, John, and I see that relationship also, especially with that word evapotranspiration showing up. So this is probably one, how did you characterize it? Watch, maybe?
Maybe, a maybe.
A maybe.
Maybe.
Well, it says evapotranspiration and management of irrigation and water delivery systems, not of forest.
Yeah, to me, it's,
So what I would suggest later on the ecosystem stuff, you'll see water there, I
Yeah.
suspect, and that's
Yeah.
where it'll come out and be entirely relevant.
So this would be a no or a maybe, probably not a yes.
I think it depends how you define agriculture, because if you write to the Department of Forestry, you write to the Department of Agriculture.
Can I comment too? I think the other work groups that I've been to are a little territorial from the ag. Kind of territorial on the, I'm just saying, so, maybe we let those group, we can do an inner, we'll be coordinating later.
Because you're gonna try to narrow from what, there's 31.
there's 31 of them, you don't want to do all of them.
We'll keep, kind of see this visually all at once.
You can look in your
It's in
handout,
the packet.
it's in your packet.
This package?
Yes,
Oh.
and they're all laid out, and there's 31 of them. So this is why we started before lunch, because we have to go through every single one of these to decide whether it's yes, no, or maybe.
What was nice yesterday's meeting was the listing that summarized all of them on one table, and what the other work groups had
Yeah, we
already
had,
carved out.
because we're last, ours is the big blank.
Exactly, so some guidance for all of us here would already say, okay, here's who's doing these,
Right.
and do we need to
Oh, well,
word
can
it?
we pull that up?
Would it be helpful to see that?
Well,
Yeah.
on one hand, I thought I'd rather not, because I don't want to taint our kind of way we do what we do.
We'll show it to you, and then you guys can decide.
On the other hand, it can help guide
We
us
can
now and
make
make
a
us.
copy of that.
Yeah.
Tona.
Let's just do it.
Let's do that. Here's mine. Oops,
You got
you're
yours?
on. Do you want mine? No.
That's okay. It doesn't need-
Okay, so we'll make a copy and have you all look at it, so you know
You
who's
have
already
this while we
playing in
go
these
through it.
pools.
Well, one of the things that we decided too, Mike, in our work group was that we may not be the main lead on that particular task, but we would be a support to other work groups, where we may have an interest to support that work group, but then, stuff that we might collect and all that.
So for item one, I'd say, for the moment, kind of a question mark, but we can come back and look at question marks after we go through the whole list, determine whether it really, we may find something that better fits it than.
Okay, so for now, we'll put it as a question mark. How's that for agricultural water use efficiency? And how about urban water use efficiency? Are you going to be involved
No.
in energy efficient appliances and things like that?
But having said that, I think we're across the board interested in improving the water delivery infrastructure in Plymouth County.
Well, right, but the municipal work group is focusing on that. And so, do you want to weigh in on their work? Do you want to be involved in what they're doing, or focus on other things?
No. I would say.
No.
No? Okay, good. Okay, number 3 is flood management. That's,
Yes.
You got it.
so as you can see, these bullets in the middle column are a lot oriented to the whole state. We don't have a lot of levee flood walls, for example, around here. We have some. And we don't have detention basins, the ones that they manage for floods like we do down in LA. But we do have other things, such as restoring natural floodplain functions and ecological processes.
Looks like ag and
The meadow group.
They've already got one.
The Meadow Group has definitely, he's handing this out, you guys, and when you look at everybody else's work, the darker X's are where the other groups are focusing their work. And then the lighter X's are, maybe we're interested, maybe you want to hear more about it from other groups.
So one thing we hear about in forestry relative to this topic has to do with forest lands and roads, and the connection of roads to water courses and how they influence the timing of flows. So there is a connection there. I would submit that we look and see if that sort of topic comes up elsewhere.
Under flood management, are you talking about
Yeah.
number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the only, to me, that's the only linkage that I could think of in the other stuff.
Well, weren't the meadow restoration projects designed to address flood too, by
Yes.
capturing winter flows?
I
Yeah.
think of fire, flood, mud. That is something that they talk about
That's
a lot
true, too.
down
Okay, so
south.
there's
And so,
some- yeah.
in that regard, I would suggest that you do maybe put a maybe by it,
Yeah,
and then we'll
maybe.
just see how it evolves, knowing that we're gonna be interacting with the floodplains, meadows, and water bodies group as well.
Maybe we're a light X and here, this fire is addressed elsewhere.
Right.
Right.
So is this a maybe, do you
Yeah,
think,
maybe.
folks?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
You can see how they all kind of, you start to get it all
Yeah.
laced together.
Okay, and the number 4 is conveyance in the Delta. Now,
Yeah.
do you want to get involved with the Delta? Ben, do you have any suggestions on
Don't
that?
get involved.
No.
So what do people think? Yes, no, maybe on that one?
Now,
No.
municipal checked it, but we're gonna revisit this with this little group.
So the lighter X's, those indicate strategies that work group wanted to have some input on at some point, but not to be the primary focus for generating recommendations. And those, that will occur during the integration workshops that Leah mentioned. So that will be the opportunity for having some say in some of those management strategies that there is some overlap on.
And we might find projects where there's a lot of overlap, but we don't know that yet. So is that, so what are you thinking about Delta conveyance?
No.
No. How were you thinking very much? I have to do that in my day job. More than you mentioned. Okay, and conveyance, regional and local. Now this is a distribution of water through canals and, you know, agreements, water management agreements, sometimes rivers.
Well, I think we have to be involved, although maybe we won't want to be involved, because there are some things in the watershed that have a bearing.
You mean like road culvert
I mean,
blockages?
like Oro Ditch or
Like what?
diversions.
Are there diversions on the?
And on ag
property?
lands, are they diversions on forest property or are they diversions on ag
Well,
lands?
the diversion that brings water into Sierra Valley is all through.
It's all through forest, yeah.
Correct. That one's the big one.
So I think a quiet X there.
Okay, a maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. And system reoperation is number 6, and that's a lot about, well, it is about recharge from above ground reservoirs to groundwater basins. So, but again, from a statewide perspective, there's a lot of work, for example, in the Kern area, the Kern fan, where people take a lot of water from other places and deposit it in this fan like a bank account, and then pull the water out when they need it. Of course, what they're finding out this year is the bank account has nothing in it, and so they're all getting into the, like, whose drop is left and who gets the last drop. So it's very complicated. It's a very high-profile issue in other parts of the state, but I don't know if it directly applies to us up here. Yeah. For, you know, we've been talking about some of these. We only have these 3 dams above us, and they're DWR and they're all prescriptive.
Yeah, well, there have been proposals made to do groundwater recharge in Plumas County that would be then sold or in some way controlled.
That could be addressed in number 8. There's other places where.
Where would that be, John?
I don't know. Well, where specifically would be Stanley Lane in that area in Indian Valley, where there have been proposals to use the county-owned land and the Caltrans-owned land as recharge areas for, for Indian Valley.
That's a huge sticky political issue, though.
Absolutely, but I'm bringing it up to avoid it. So
No,
we
I
never
think
had
it's,
this
is it
thing.
something that the forest group wants to get involved with? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't get involved anymore.
It's gonna be in meadows and floodplains.
Going back to that
It's
1960
defined.
report, where they
Yeah.
kind of characterized the groundwater basins a little bit. I mean, I was pretty impressed. Indian Valley's typically had pretty high groundwater.
Right.
And it was interesting that Genesee Valley, they characterized it as having a pretty deep aquifer for that narrow little valley. Well, we're going to share all this information.
No,
but I'm going back to some of those informational things that we have out there and knowledge that need to put into this process.
That also might fall under later ones, like the recharge area protection.
Yeah, there's gonna be, and I appreciate if you had all of them, this checklist will give you some ideas also as where we're gonna pick up these subjects, because they keep going at these subjects from different areas, of course. So under system reoperation, do you wanna hold it as a maybe, or just say no now, or?
No.
Is it a no?
For now.
Okay. All right, water transfers.
Water delivered from one water user to another through water returned at some specific future date, either in kind or specific ratio.
I think that's no. Water ever be.
I say no. I vote for no.
Okay, no on that one? No on number 7? Okay, number 8 is an interesting one. This has caused a lot of discussion in some of the other work groups. The coordinated and planned use and management of both surface water and groundwater resources to maximize the availability and reliability of water. And the reason this came up in the other groups is they're like, is water a commodity that we're gonna actually develop here? And is that part of our management goals? And, you know, that's a good question for this group. I mean, the other groups are saying, well, we are interested in what happens to surface and groundwater, especially with new regulations, but that doesn't necessarily automatically mean that we're gonna be selling it. So that's kind of what's implied in this number 8.
Under the objective increasing.
It's kind of up there with water transfers. You go through all this so you can sell what you think is surplus water.
And so far, every group has shown an interest in it.
Yeah, I would say
Ag people dominating, saying yes for sure.
They're gonna definitely be looking at this the hardest, but it's, you know, it's not in the forest plans to produce water as a commodity, it's in to manage the forest and it's a byproduct, just for example, how we've been looking at it.
It says recharging groundwater storage with surface water supplies.
It's hard to imagine an upland or forest project that would contain that.
Yeah, so is it a maybe for now?
I would have it as a maybe, yeah.
A maybe, and we'll circle back and see. A lot of this is gonna depend on how this groundwater legislation starts rolling out. So number 9 is desalinization of brackish seawater or even brackish groundwater.
That's probably not something we're ready on.
No, okay, I love these girls, okay. Precipitation enhancement, cloud seeding.
Form of
It's a form of weather modification that artificially stimulates clouds and produces more rainfall and snowfall.
So as a little background, we know that PG&E has the silver iodine burners in the Almanor Basin. In the planning department, there are records where the DWR wanted to place them all over the upper watershed. I think it was very controversial at the time. John, you may know some.
Yeah.
I know McMorrow knew a lot about it. I don't believe those were ever done, or maybe if they were done, they were abandoned later.
We had a big forum on that, thank you.
I know, I was there.
It's definitely a hot issue in parts
This
of
is separate and apart and above what PG&E was doing, right? This other plan that
Yes,
we're talking
there's
about.
DWR, there's some records on it in the planning department, but I don't think it was done.
Okay,
I was just gonna say it directly relates to the forested lands, that's where you're gonna be doing the CMS.
Yeah, so
Right.
you're suggesting we should.
Directly
What would our
related.
role be in that? As a work, what would our,
Air-to-air missiles?
What would our role be?
Air-to-air missiles. Well, that's what we'd have to struggle through. If we take it on, then we're gonna have to.
Well, I'm reminded of a conversation with the Chai Company. They have mountaintops they put cell towers on. The same kind of mountaintops would be maybe where you put a burner. Of course, most of them are probably on the forested lands, but there might be private forested lands. I don't know, what do you think about this? Precipitation enhanced?
Well, we must leave it as a maybe.
Well, I think Brian's correct in that no other area has more opportunity to influence that than the uplands and forests. So,
Okay.
And there's
at least
a
a maybe.
recent study done by the University of Wyoming in the mountains where they did snow enhancement through cloud seeding, and it turned out to be a pretty positive at high elevations. I should get that study.
There's also been studies done in the last year talking about the relationship between the redwoods and the bog formation in the ocean as a symbiotic kind of thing going on that never gets really quantified, but may or may not exist.
So we're gonna plant redwoods?
No, it's just uplands. We call it uplands in our
I'm
case.
joking with you, John. I just don't know. I agree it's important. I'm just not sure how we would affect, come up with projects or anything.
The cloud seeding column is examples of possible approaches. So those are examples, but couldn't like forest structure also influence precipitation and enhancement?
Potentially, more snow on the ground or something.
Yeah, so
I
that's the
don't know if that's
maybe.
precipitation.
No, that's coming out of the clouds. So.
Yes, I mean, I don't know how we would.
I don't know how the forest could.
What could we do? Unless we put something in the atmosphere to enhance precipitation.
I'm just curious, for my concern would be somebody be stealing your water before it gets to you.
Right.
Something like this, so I could see, where's it really dry, where they need water, agriculture, coming up the mountains, and they could drop in the valley, and then you get less in the mountains. So that's not a project, but that's something that you wanna, I'd be thinking about, is that possible to do that?
I think that's why a lot of people bring it out of the Sierra Crest before it goes to Nevada.
That's a common word, right? But I have to say that, as Carl mentioned, that I call it my Aaron Brockovich movie experience to sit in on a meeting up in Chester. The folks over in the Eagle Lakes are saying that maybe that's why the Eagle Lake is dropping, because the water's being wrung out of the clouds in the Almanor Basin. I don't know of any scientific evidence on that, or we're just kind of guessing there.
Well, let me say that EGI, because I remember they have 9 stations up in the Lake Almanor area, and they said that it contributes to 3% or less of the total water rainfall in the area. So the problem that we ran into was we got off into this nanoparticles. I was in nuclear physics. I've been there, and it's everywhere. So why are you worrying about it? It's men's makeup and everything, so clothing and all that. So it's insignificant to what you're. But we had 2 people up there that just would not let it go.
Oh boy.
So that's the other consideration. Okay, so we have precipitation enhancement as a maybe. How about municipal recycled water, which is the recycling and reuse of water originating from municipal treatment plant? It would have to go uphill.
No. Well, now this is my opportunity to talk about the new pond. As a result of SPI has built a pond on ag lands. They're going to use that pond eventually to stop discharging into the creek. The pond it's been finalized. It will be, the idea is for them to take their discharge from the industrial part of the mill, not the log deck, and put that in the pond to use for a potential source to fight fires. Therefore, it has sort of a regional benefit. Also, that water will be used on the ag land that the pond sits on. Jesse Segura's actually got the lease on it. And I know Russell's interested in further use of that water. It's sort of a municipal recycle, but it's not out of a sewage treatment plant. And it does have to meet all the water quality objectives. They have to work with the water board to get that to happen.
So are you suggesting a maybe instead of a no?
I just wanted people to be aware that sometimes we get narrow thinking and there's a broader thing, although this objective really does say municipal treatment plant. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a no right now for number 11. And number 12 is surface storage. And those are the dams that I was talking about, Temperance Flat sites, expanding Los Vaqueros. So are we interested in new surface storage dams in the forested areas at this point?
Well, I wouldn't call it dams, but I could say that we had more interest in on the forest in developing what we call off-channel water sources for like dust abatement for timber sales and such. So it's sort of an indirect, but between the just water supply and drought in general, and just water available for dust abatement when we're managing a timber sale. I mean, over on Beckworth, there was actually, district ranger there actually wanted to postpone for a quarter, even awarding a particular timber sale and starting its implementation. He says there's no water to dust the roads with, and people don't seem to like the alternative. So, we've been talking about off-channel water sources as actually a kind of a forest management or forest management support function, but in a really specific way. It also it avoids the need to draw out of the streams that might have yellow-legged frogs and deal with all of that.
So that would say a yes for the next one and a no for this one.
It'd be 13.
Yeah.
I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah, because most of what we'd be dealing with would be considered very small.
Yeah, less than 5.
You know.
Right, yeah, right. It'd be on the small scale.
So we're thinking
But what about Almanor, Bud Lake, Lake David?
Blue Bottom.
Are those considered surface storage?
Well, yeah, but this is new. This number 1 is talking about new dams and new storage.
Okay, so it wouldn't have any authority over these.
So it's not talking about the management of existing.
No, as
Okay.
I read this is the temperance flat and the sites and all these things that are in the new bond that I'm actually proposing we compete with, but.
Well, remember too, that Lake Almanor is owned by PG&E, it's not a public, it's only public because that's the first stipulation.
Right. I mean, they have to answer to FERC.
For a chunk of water in Almanor, it's also.
We do have an actual one up there, it's called the railroad on East Shore. Remember about 4 or 5 years ago when we had the big laying in part of the railroad, the buildup that blew out and the railroad track was suspended in the air for 100 feet. You plugged up those culverts up there, you'd have a storage system if BNSF would allow you to do that.
Are you talking about the exit from Mountain Meadows Reservoir? Or
No.
stuff?
All along East Shore of the railroad tracks, a lot of that was filled in. And when we had the big melt runoff in 1992, 93, where part of that buildup washed out, and it was in the front page of the Progressive where you had 100 feet of railroad track suspended in air for 20 feet up.
And that wasn't Jay's railroad.
Okay, you guys, all right, so number 12 is no, right?
Correct.
And number 13, use of human-made above-ground reservoirs to collect water for later release is a yes or a maybe.
The reservoir sure bothers me. We're not talking about building any reservoirs to address the problem that I was just talking about. I'm flipping through to see if it might fit someplace else in terms of alternatives for forest management. Okay. Implementation.
Well, we could put it as a maybe if you'd like to hold it, and we'll circle back at the end, maybe.
Well, but it says it's for later release when needed. And I think what we're talking about here are fairly small ponds.
Yeah, it's a
just
little.
They're
service,
temporary,
drafting.
right?
Yeah.
They're temporary. Okay, so that's a big distinction. These are permanent.
Aren't you using some sort of vaults now? And I think Joe Hoffman was telling me some of the new techniques that you were really kind of isolating from the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'd be like a 10,000 gallon tank that's buried.
And then
it would help mitigate, like Nancy was saying, yellow-legged frog issues and drafting from open sources that we've traditionally done.
Have you ever heard of that technique before?
I got a technical question. Why would you want to spray the roads with water to keep the dust down? Why would you want to do that?
Well, we have to.
That's
During a
law.
timber operation, the state mandates that we do
Do
that.
that? Okay, I'm just
Not only to protect the road surface from being lost in the form of dust, but also for safety, health safety, if you have materials on your road that could get into people's lungs, things like that.
Okay, so what's
You
number
have a road
13?
go through an asbestos area, and you definitely want to water that area to keep the dust down. And there is those intrusions all around.
And the road surface dust ends up in the, especially at crossings, can end up in the systems. So it's
And
also
this is a
water
big
quality.
issue on East Shore. Whenever SPI or PG&E cut up there, up on the mountain on Dyer, that dust comes right down into the.
Okay, well, I'm just curious on the water use. If we're focusing on water, I'm just thinking, when you go to your gas pump or you try to buy some kind of a post hole digger, and you can't buy it because you're using too much, put too much pollutants in. And that's a little bit. I'm just one guy with an auger, but still everything counts. I'm not sure where we're going with. We're trying to manage water. I'm not sure I see how, using that way to spray it on roads. It's going to create evaporation. It's going to evaporate a lot quicker. So I'm not sure how tight you want to be.
One thing that's happened out of the drought, Ben, you can talk about this at some point, but they've had to go to other things besides water, because there hasn't been any water, and people are going through beet pulp, and what are some lignin sprays?
Mag chloride, magnesium chloride.
Lots of, so water isn't the only thing that's used.
I was just curious.
It's an air quality issue, basically, because you're throwing particulates into the air. How often in say a day do you have to water a road that you're using in a logging operation?
Well, typically we're logging in the summertime, so once or twice a day.
Yeah, it's not just once usually, it's more often more than that.
I've heard
You
these.
have the other problem too, though, the trucks running all over the road, it creates a lot of dust and loosens the soil. Then if you get a rain, all that washes down into the streams and everything.
Yeah. It's to hold your road bed, basically, for the most part.
The new water, I've been hearing all these rumors about the drought declarations and what's going to happen. I know they're going to dig into this issue.
Well, they were changing emergency measures for like the forced practice rules last year, because of the drought.
What did they do last year? I know the water board even discussed it when they were looking at the curtailment at their hearing. There was some discussion, I think, on the water and the road issue, and the air quality impacts if they curtailed water use and they couldn't water these roads.
Yeah, on a harvest plan by harvest plan basis, you had to basically address how you were going to try to mitigate, if in any way you could mitigate for the amount of water you're using, the timing of the use, things that would help conserve the water, developing off-channel storage facilities.
I think we can see 2 or 3 other objectives that we haven't gotten to yet, where this could fit without the discomfort of making it sound like we're going to go.
Okay, so we said no to 13.
We had a question mark, but a no.
No? Are we saying no? All right, number 14, drinking water treatment and distribution. Drinking water in this context is via public water system. Public water system is defined, blah, blah. Okay, so are we going to get involved in that?
Let the munis handle it.
That's right.
Well, are there any large municipal watersheds that are forested that we're getting light from?
Yes.
Oh, like Boyle Ravine would be a wonderful project. But that's mainly a thinning project, not necessarily a treatment distribution project. You know what I mean? I hope that we get into municipal watersheds actually, but. Okay. So are we okay with 14 being a no?
Yeah.
Okay. And all right, moving on to 15, groundwater remediation, aquifer remediation. This is the removal of constituents or contaminants that affect beneficial uses of groundwater. Groundwater remediation systems can employ passive or active methods to remove contaminants.
Sure.
But that's pollution, but we're not doing anything.
Yeah, in cities, this is really big in the San Joaquin and the municipal areas where they have highly polluted groundwater basins that they would like to rehabilitate for drinking or even non-potable purposes. But up until now, we're not aware of any massive pollution plumes in our groundwater basins.
Probably have some from old leaking gas tanks, but.
Well, we have, I'm sure we have something, but we haven't found it. And there's natural arsenic in some of our soils, and so I think we're gonna find things, but it isn't like, Aerojet fuels and those kinds of things.
We know that the old hotel across the street had a tank, and when they were looking at dealing with selling the park or making it a courthouse, they found it, they had to remediate it, and they did tests all along the street on this side for the plume to see if it had moved very far. And I think they did pick up some minor traces, but we have probably those little point sources throughout the county, but it's not like the Stringfellow acid pits in Riverside County where it used to be the dumping ground for LA, and there's this huge monster of contamination.
Chico has the plume, but anyway,
So I would say
is this our
15
issue on number 15?
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh, yeah,
fields?
leach fields, well, yeah.
It's gonna be an issue in about 30 years.
Yeah, and that's municipal though, right? That's not us, right? Urban, yeah. So what are we saying about number 15?
It's a no.
15,
No. Okay, no? Going once, going twice? Okay, number 16, matching water quality to use. A management strategy that recognizes that not all water uses require the same water quality, and that suitability for one use may not be suitability for another. A water quality constituent often is only considered a contaminant when that constituently adversely affects the intended use of the water. So as you can see in the third column, they're focusing on municipal, industrial, and agriculture. Now they have temperatures.
Yep, matching water at certain temperatures to in-stream and ecosystem uses.
But I think that has to do with discharges, but I'm again, not sure.
Yes, I would think so.
So is that a no, or a maybe, or a yes?
I would say no.
No.
No? Okay. All right, now, pollution prevention. Reducing or eliminating waste at the source by modifying production processes, promoting use of non-toxic or less toxic substances, the implementation of practices or conservation techniques, including activities that reduce generation or discharge of pollutants, application of innovative alternative technology that prevent pollutants from entering the environment prior to
How
treatment.
about yes?
Yes,
Well,
because
forestry's right in
pollutant,
there.
I mean, any kind of sediment is considered a pollutant by the state. So, yeah.
We think that this pollution prevention actually will be, all the work groups are going to
Yeah,
have
it
to
has
address
forestry
this.
uses, pre-harvest planning, stream side management, road construction management, forestry
If you look
regeneration.
at your chart, that's number 17. Everybody else has looked at it with either a big or a small X.
Can I just make a comment? I mean, lower down there on the list, 22, forest management, wouldn't that just be covered under something like forest management or watershed management or custom? It's a subset, some of these are subsets of bigger issues. that we
I
can
think
address.
so, but see, they named forestry, and that's why I was thinking, we would have to have a good reason to say why we weren't going to address it here and address it
Just make
someplace
a
else.
comment.
Well, you're also getting into, we're talking with the forest and uplands work group, we're also getting into invasive species management and how we do that and where and how we use chemicals.
Oh, chemical spraying
And where
and
that
things.
goes and all of that kind of thing. I don't know how much this group would engage in that, it's a primary interest, it's something we're doing anyway.
So could we suggest a maybe? You know, if not a
Yeah.
yes?
Yes.
I'm
Yes?
saying
We don't
yes.
have very many
Okay.
yeses yet.
All right, good, a yes, an affirmative. All right, did Terry show up with the pizzas? She threatened to go to Plumies with them.
I
She
think
left a while ago.
Traffic, you know.
Yeah. So I was counting on giving you a recharge before we got to the end of these. So we're up to number 18, and it's salt and salinity management, which is talking about the management of salts, dissolved minerals, lime, gypsum, salinity. Human causes of salinity include home use water softeners, groundwater pumping, seawater intrusion, and use of fertilizers or soil amendments. Is that big for us?
No.
What are people thinking, no?
No.
All right, urban stormwater runoff management. Dry weather runoff, excess landscape irrigation into storm drains, parking areas, roofs, dry wells, and, collecting and routing stormwater runoff. Is that?
How about no?
No, how's
Ben,
no?
have you seen these before?
These,
Resource management strategies?
not this comprehensive list.
Yeah, see, this is the new plan, the 2013.
And you pull these out and put them in, I'm gonna pull these out and put them in this format, right?
Yeah, I was thinking California water plan.
From the California Water Plan. Kind of give Lewis some credit for really doing a good job of doing this.
Yeah. Okay, number 20, agricultural land stewardship, farm and ranch owners, conservation of natural resources, consumption of food and fiber. keeping land in private ownership. Okay, so this is cropland and rangeland management for stream bank erosion, rapid stormwater runoff protection, stream bank stabilization, riparian vegetation, grazing, cover crops, education, land use planning, land conservation.
But yes,
Pardon?
how about yes?
Yes, for agricultural land stewardship.
Grazing on the public land.
Even though we have a group, an ag group
Okay.
specifically?
Right, so that's a yes for this group?
I would
Or is it a
at least
maybe?
make it a question mark.
Is it an overlapping area or is it a primary area?
When we're done going through these all, we'll go through the yeses again and hone down and give you another chance to look at it.
So is it a yes or a maybe?
I'd say yes.
Well, it's a non-bolded X.
So that's a maybe.
Randy, since we weren't able to participate, at least for the Plumas in the ag group meeting, although I think you said Quentin was there, what came up about federal land? Is the grazing permits on federal lands going to be looked at in that work group? Because if it's not addressed there, it probably should be addressed here, but otherwise I think we're like in huge overlap here.
You know, I've got to be honest with you, I cannot remember.
We were starting to go
exactly
check
how
it out.
they did that. That's why we probably should keep it as a maybe for sure, because I see the grazing as a big issue here, especially with and both private land forests have grazed too, and the stream bank stabilization and the issues around that.
So did we come up with maybe? I'm distracted.
Well, it's an issue up north for sure, up around the Illinois Basin, particularly over Mount Meadows, that area, because we got problems going over there right now.
I think it's a maybe. It's overlapping. We can.
Okay, so maybe. Okay, now, I suggest we take a break and grab some pizza and come back here and sit down and finish this off. We're up at 20, we've got to go to 31, set our next meeting date and circle back to the yeses.
We got
and
to
then-
talk about the projects too, so.
Oh, yeah, the projects.
I think we can eat and talk at the same
I
time.
think so, so let's get some food
That's what I'm
there's
thinking.
water
Talk at
and
the same
coffee
time.
and then come back and finish this up and hopefully we'll still get you out.
So everybody gets something and we'll start almost again.
Okay, so there's 3 different kinds of pizzas, so everybody should find something that they like. And please do.
Go for it.
You betcha. The welfare group is a productive group.
We're going to sleep.
We're almost done. And they're all still, you know, it's interesting.
I would maybe not on
Well, and that's why we set aside those. And the thing is, meeting the project that use both of those.
Yeah.
Really well after
We gotta get this.
Started doing
you know,
4.5.
this is
Okay, yeah.
It's on the stove. Just have a minor
Rachel, Hi, so I'm the outreach coordinator for the CFLR.
But I am excited.
I know, I see you at the email.
That's fine.
Yeah, my husband is a short.
Birds aren't all
It's like it's easy to wear a pretty hat, that's probably what's going on.
College gets that. When they develop their not only is it going to be more covered, there's going to be more. I'm just saying, you know, for the region, all the things in the state, they all big belt black walls. There were letters that supported
Well, there's that guy, you written about that guy, Gary, who has to talk to No, not Gary. Right here.
The Hard Rock, they don't have we have substantial shallow, deep. Now, where it lays on the landscape is what you're You know, basically the only thing we're responding is John all those functions are happening you know, areas for different things. So that's why we had all year to ask us to look at this. I know.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
That's a lot of colleges.
John's gonna fix that up. You're gonna bring up the regions, stuff like this new program, so you're gonna have to bring that up. We won't have to bring that program up, just not, you know, well, there's an environmental
Workers can hopefully the first meeting next week. So we'll kind of
We did that monitoring now internally we have our own UC, stuff that you have, if I can lure them in, now some jurors just in it's not trying to draw them into positive.
I do! Everybody around here knows me well.
Yeah, right.
So are you
That's the gentleman's name, the Jameson. Yeah, the greatest story about that he has gotten engaged in that Good.
last time we did So
So then the question is, well, you have to acknowledge them and compliment them for getting it out there so quickly. Or else what's happening is that, but on the pipeline. The next thing is, how can we continue to learn from it by supporting them to do the work, right? And be on their do it. And we as federal state folks but we all have an interest in the results and learning from it. So collectively, the public, we're not directly SDI, we're working with them to bring in other independent
So we're going to kind of dig into that later, but for right
In that, resources, and
that's the beauty of bringing in research, formal research. That's what Ray does on Friday. Just let them know how we have shared with me that all the wildfires got their attention and they're starting to shift field rates all around the SDI? Well, it's like they're going to start new ones. They're going to start new ones because they're recognizing that protect their investments. But that's true.
Because, I saw on the youth fire safety council, the SDI is there maybe once a year. Bullet bar. Forest Service is doing a bunch of work, everything right on the fire safety council. So you don't want to participate. Requires follow-up treatment. It's good that they're changing.
It's gotten their attention. We've got to create resilience.
The controversy there is they're not providing
So they're doing some sort of exemption with regard to will pits?
We're trying to
and so
because of course they're going to jump on that. Why would we do all this work but then leave this?
the literature and said, now we're proposing how we might look at the question. How do you look at the basis? We're just starting.
To me, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, okay, it's not going to be the same level of treatment that you would do
So I live on a
beyond
hill in the meadows.
riparian area, within riparian areas can improve resilience. Make it such a,
Yeah, they got to.
oh, yeah.
Monitoring timing, good model, and we've got that.
Hard to maintain it, but we can't use it.
What they're gonna need, and just how it actually starts doing. Moving back, how we're doing.
Okay, everybody, let's reconvene and roll this up.
I was gonna leave
Perfect, right there, have you guys been?
Taping us? To stream it.
I don't know if everyone knows Michael Jackson, where'd you go, Michael? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mike Jackson. I live a block and a half up there, and I represent 42 environmental organizations around California under the guise of the Environmental Water Partners. I'm their chief counsel.
Right. We are on.
And Michael is a water lawyer outside of these areas and is interested in the forest water connections.
So we're on number 21 as I count. Yep.
All right, number 21, ecosystem restoration. Improvement of modified natural landscapes and biological communities to provide for their sustainability and for their use and enjoyment by current and future generations. And if you look down into their sample actions in the California Water Plan, non-native plant and animal species show up, and reproducing natural flows in rivers and streams, which could be tied to some of the things we're going to be interested in the forest water balances study.
So.
Yes.
Yes.
A bold yes.
Huh?
A bold yes.
Yes. I had that feeling coming into this one.
So let's guess about the next one. It's called forest management. The application of forestry principles, practices, and business techniques to the management of forests to achieve the owner's objectives. Different forest landowners have different goals and
yes.
And objectives, different strategies, accomplish, just so you know that they heard you in the California Water Plan, and has water produced has economic value that equals or exceeds that of any other forest resource. Are we interested, folks?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, land use, planning and management. Orderly and planned use of land, resource, facilities, services with a view to securing the physical, economic, and social efficiency, health and well-being of urban and rural communities.
Yes. Please.
Yes, please, or yes?
Just yes.
If you look at some of the examples in there and you look at the recently adopted Kings County General Plan, there's some not exact same language, but some closeness there, at least to the structure. So
Here's
yes.
the exciting one for me. Yeah, 23 is a yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Recharge area protection.
Yes.
It's obvious.
Yes.
Yes? Everyone says yes? Yippee. Okay, number 24 is a yes.
That's also what did they do with 23?
Yes.
25, sediment management. Management of fine solid materials, sand, silt, and clay, suspended or settled, renews, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what does everybody think? Yes?
Yes.
Watershed management, number 26.
I'm guessing yes.
This is the post-pizza.
Wait till I get some pizza.
You're gonna regret this immensely. And incentives, water markets.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, everyone's saying yes?
Yes.
For
Yes, yes, so far, number 27.
Oh, it's very important.
Economic incentive.
Economic incentive, yeah.
Ah, okay, you guys are running rampant for our instructions, but that's all right. Outreach and engagement?
Yes. So the one thing I zoom in on is the last bullet in the third column there, the Education Environment Initiative. That's the California Department of Education endeavor. And so, as most of you know, I do a program called Forestry Institute for Teachers, and we talk about water and the relationship to forestry, so there's an opportunity to help with that sort of education.
So our chair is recommending yes on this one, 28?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, water and culture.
Yes.
See, now you want more noise before the pizza, I will have to note that.
No, but I already have.
Okay. Okay, yes on water and culture, or increasing awareness of how cultural uses about, the tribes are gonna get way into this, I know that, even though they're not on this other checklist. Cultural values, commodities, the cultural resource, communication, consideration of tribal. We are also calling local knowledge an important knowledge resource that we want to have in this plan. You know, on the ground experience, all that sort
I
of thing.
think this is where we're getting, why we're getting so many yeses, is that so much of the watershed is forested lands, and that interrelationship between forested lands and all these other aspects. Probably need to go back through all these yeses and discuss it again, because we're way beyond the recommended 6. But I don't want to stop the discussion, just recognize that we're taking a lot.
We can prioritize.
You can prioritize.
Bold.
Yes.
Like the others.
All right, so with all that, where are we with water and culture? Is it a yes, no, or a maybe?
It was a big issue for the forest, right?
It is, and I can tell you that when the discussions with the tribes that we had around some of the restoration work we're doing right now, and trying to find out what projects they're interested in and maybe want to build with us, incorporating TEK, what Trina said is it comes down to water. At the end of it, that's the number one thing, is water and the relationship of water land management to water. And so that's why that one gives me such a resounding yes, is because I already know we're doing it. We intend to do it. Keeping it up on the radar in this group, I think, is a good thing. That's my opinion.
Well, since 29 is part of all of 28.
Well, right, we can also, you know, we're gonna be doing our own middle columns, and we're gonna figure out how to slice and dice this with the yeses and the maybes, for sure. And if somebody else takes the lead in the tribes, maybe we just work with them. We'll figure it out. But it's a yes for now?
Yes.
Okay. Water dependent recreation, number 30.
Yes.
Swimming, skiing, snowboarding, waterfowl. Is this, I know that, just to look at your other groups, I know that floodplains and water bodies are gonna really take this on.
We had to take it on too. If you all recall, the fires near Lake Eleanor, the lake shuts down. Bucks Lake shuts down.
Right, it's a huge
Clearly,
impact. Fires are
there's a
huge.
close relationship.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. What was everybody thinking? Yes?
That's kind of a reach.
A what?
Little X.
A maybe. Okay, how about a maybe?
Well, also forest landowners, some of them provide fishing and hunting opportunities on their lands, but fishing particularly. So Wheeler has that, and SBI both have those kind of
You
arrangements.
actually can't exclude someone from walking in on your property and using it for that purpose. You can shut the gate and not allow them vehicular traffic, but I think most landowners are in agreement that we gotta provide some type of limited public access to their lands.
Well, that's the same, access to, public access to navigable waters,
Limited.
lakes, and beaches.
So is this a yes or maybe?
It's a yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
It may not be a both.
All right, I think we're going to the last one, other strategies. Okay, crop idling, dew vaporization, fog collection. irrigated land retirement, rain-fed agriculture, water bag transport.
So far, nobody's taken this.
Nobody's too excited about number 31. All right, is that a no?
Yeah, that's a no.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna, do we want to tally this up and go back through it, or do we want to move on to the other work groups have taken this list and then chewed on it later and gotten back to us. So if you want to think about this, we can go on to projects.
Each one of us take a stab at prioritizing this.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful exercise if you would do that. And so we'll get out the list of, big X's and little X's and then the no's, and then people take that back and think about it. A lot of people like municipalities take to their boards, so it's a good, you should pause and think about it, what we're really going to commit to.
We could do a form on the website where people can jump on there and click those, the ones that are their highest priority. Kind of vote.
Okay, so Zeke is going to set up some way for us to finalize this before we meet again, or before the water management group expects us to finalize this.
So how many yeses did we get overall? 11.
Twice as many.
All right, well, think harder, folks.
So now you know why everybody's got so many, because all these relationships are being knitted together in these strategies.
So as a strategy for proceeding, you might consider doing high, medium, and low with comments, such that if it turns out that there's a whole lot of lows, we just, by a prioritization, it's not necessarily throwing them overboard, but maybe if they're all lows, then it does get excluded. But there's some comments that might also, someone said, yeah, we know that this is covered by another group, that could inform the next discussion. So if it's low and covered by another group, that's a good reason to take it off.
And it will be up to the management group to make sure that each of these are addressed by one group, so that's something to keep in mind also. And again, there will be opportunities for providing input on other strategies, but for priorities, the management group will be assigning ones that are not selected.
Or deciding they don't,
or
are not relevant to our region.
But we have to justify why they're not relevant.
So clarification, did you say there are 11 X's or yeses that we have?
Yeah.
That's not bad, everybody else has 16 or more, so.
Right, no, we exhibited a fair amount of discipline, at least till we got the pieces.
If you include the maybes, you got about almost as many as we do.
Anyway, more work if you want to take it up later, but I'd like to move on to the.
So before we leave this, how are we going to deal with this high, medium, low? How do you guys want to deal with the priorities? You want to deal with the website issue? That you'll set up?
Yeah. So you want people to vote high, medium, and low on each one of these 31.
Well, we should show what we already did.
Just the yeses.
Got it. Okay.
Tailor it.
And
Maybe you
maybe-
can tailor it to each group.
Mike is saying maybes too, Chairman Mike.
We'll have 4 different ones, one for each work group, and they'll vote on the ones they've identified as yes or maybe.
Okay.
Okay, does that sound right to everybody?
Sure. And then we'll revisit it briefly at the next meeting, so that we kind of know where we're going. In case people haven't done it, they'll have another shot.
And other
We're not going
people.
to spend as much time as we have on it today. Terry, got some thoughts?
Well, I don't want to open up a can of worms. No, but to make it streamlined and something that we're learning as we go along, but when I had a conversation about the next work group meetings we'll be having and what we need to figure out. And so our group, Meadows, has come up with our 6 that we think is our priority, but ultimately it has to be based on the issues we identify. And so one of the major things we're going to do at the first part of our meeting next time is everybody's going to sit and look at that map and we're going to all brainstorm what are the issues related to meadows, floodplains, and water bodies, because those issues have got to ultimately tie to your resource management strategies. And so we were thinking of coming up with a matrix where you list the ones that we think are going to be our priority, and then you tie issues to it. And so if you've got 10 issues that are with one resource management strategy, that one's probably going to bubble to the top then as a very important resource management strategy. So it's good to take a first stab because we all may be right about it, but the idea of spending maybe too much time guessing at it before we actually identify the issues seem to be the core driving thing about all of this whole plan is we have to identify our region's issues, and that's what we're gonna address, so it might be worth it to take a first stab at it like you've done and try to figure out 6, but know that like we're gonna revisit it and tie it to the issues, which we haven't identified yet.
Given that, I wonder if we could also use this process of online prioritization to also identify issues.
You could.
We can go through that process, have everybody identify their top 3 issues or top 5, and we'll see what filters out through that, and that guides us at our next meeting.
It would save you time at your next meeting.
How would you want to structure that?
Issue 1,
Just, you just give us 5 blank short text blocks and say, identify your issue
And location.
less than 5 words, and we all pitch in on what we think our issues are. And then
You got your marching orders, Zeke?
This guy's the chair, I'm listening to him.
That's correct.
Anyway, I hope you all felt this was a very good exercise, and I found that all 4 groups have been engaged like you have. And I want to applaud your getting engaged with these.
Make sure your email's on that list, because we're going to be using that to let you know if there's a survey or another.
so long as we're here, then that brings up a topic. Who's not here that we
Yes.
believe should be here?
Yes.
I know you're Collins, right? You're sober. SBI is not here, right?
Greg Land and Water, right? Reach out to Greg Land and Water, Thai Company.
I didn't, my contact for them
Baby.
bounced, I didn't, so I'm not even.
I know that Cedric's busy on a habitat conservation plan right now.
And I emailed them, but, it was short notice to come from Reading, and I, apologize for my short notice.
Has CAL FIRE been notified?
Ooh. Well, all these lists went out, I don't even know if things just went into cyberspace, I don't know what.
Let's make a note. Get Cal
Okay,
Fire.
thank you, CAL FIRE, would be a good.
Cal Fire would be good for this group, especially the forestry side of Cal Fire.
Zeke, you must have some ideas, that's fine.
I'll talk to Al.
Okay, thanks so much, yeah.
All right. We're almost done, guys.
Okay, last thing, this is not something that is a finished subject by any means, we're just starting on how we're gonna do the project development process. Brian, I know you had your hands up, I'm sorry, did you wanna say something?
It was just getting back to the ranking. I guess the danger, the pro and the con is I noticed a lot of people on those maybes were keying in on these examples of possible approaches, and I'm assuming that these examples are not mutually exclusive amongst your resource management strategies. And so I think probably at a later date, if the group decides to jettison one of these or lower it in priority, that doesn't necessarily mean that example couldn't be incorporated into another that you take. So maybe once you go through the process, it might be useful to look at what you have jettisoned and see where you could incorporate that into one of the big 6, if you will.
And that's exactly when we were, yesterday the management group started on the goals. And we're fooling around with goals and objectives. It was a really torturous meeting, as they all are, goals and objectives meetings. But then the objectives have to have finally performance measures that tie to these strategies, right? And since the strategies are a new part of the 2013 plan, I think we have an opportunity to get pretty specific on how our strategies that we're selecting for this region tie to the plan objectives and also to the performance measures that we're going to use for projects or how we evolve this. So my dream or thinking at this point is that middle column in these resource management strategies is going to change a lot. For the ones that we select, we're going to be putting in what we mean by forest management, or what we mean by ecosystem restoration or water-based, and we're going to drill in on what it means to us in this work group. And it may or may not look like what you're seeing here, and that gets to how you can sort and add things and get down to 6 that really matter to you, or 6 to 11 or whatever we get.
There's a great deal of wisdom among this group that has certainly some really good understanding of the issues. I think if we go through this process of identifying issues, it'll help us then to really filter through those question marks as well as ranking the 11 yeses that we
Well, I look forward to Uma and
I know that.
And Terry leading
I know
us
that
down
was
that
some of the
golden
outcome
path at
of
the
you
next
guys
meeting.
Uma and Terry getting together last night to strategize, and one of the things was that issue identification. And I'm glad you brought it up, Terry. It's a good idea. Yes, okay. Projects.
All right, so as I said, this is just a new topic. At yesterday's meeting with the Regional Water Management Group, Uma presented the management group with a kind of a template of how you would sort of describe projects, how that might look. So this is just a preliminary. It's also kind of out of date already because we're behind that group meeting, but I'll walk you through this. It's a vehicle for plan implementation, plan objectives, establish targets for projects, the issue identified through work groups. This is what Terry and Uma are going to focus on for the next meetings of their work groups. There's going to be a project solicitation package that the regional management group finally approves that's going to go out to the work groups. It's going to be distributed at the public hearings, and this is the mechanical way that we're going to accept projects into the process. But the work groups are going to be really key in helping us sort through all these projects for ones that belong in our work group, ones that are tied to other work groups, ones that we feel most strongly about, and why can we change these or combine them. So the work groups are going to be doing a lot of work on not only submitting projects, but submitting how these projects are characterized, integrated, ranked, selected for this whole big appendix to the plan, which is our proposed actions for 20 years, really.
And we're all competing against each other.
Well, we are and we're not. It depends on the source of funds.
That's a good point.
As groups, I'm saying.
One of the things that I think we're trying to do with this whole process is to get an understanding of what we're doing individually in the watershed, because we are competing. There's no doubt about it. This whole process is a way for us to kind of maybe work together a little bit better instead of compete so much or not have understanding of the issues in another region. I like the way Sherry Thrall put it. I understand my region, Almanor, but I'm not really familiar with the issues of the Sierra Valley. And this process is connecting everybody, those dots together a little bit better than has existed.
As we go through this, we'll see at least in the IRWM program and in the new water bond, they're looking for projects that actually integrate things. And so the advantage we have of going through this process is you're not going to just be putting your forest thinning project out there in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be hooked to why this matters for water or other forest projects or the system as a whole. I mean, that's just, as you will see as we go through this, they have to yield multiple benefits for one or more of the following elements. So they're already telling you, you can't just go, well, thinning for thinning's sake is the project. It has to drill down into some of these other issues. And stormwater capture, a lot of the things we saw in the strategies, you know, if your project is in a municipal watershed and it helps secure the water supply of a municipal well, that's a double benefit, you know, that we'll tease out. Okay, is that a good example? Okay, so that's one. And then Department of Water Resources, of course, since it's their money and the bond money, they talk about the things they want to see in these proposals or they won't be competitive. So multiple benefit again, integrated management with land use, which is why you guys are really here too. Conflicts, are we dealing with conflicts in the region? Are we just glossing them over? Are we trying to address them? Are we addressing statewide priorities? Are we dealing with the disadvantaged communities? And in our case, always ag tribes. They're not the same, but it's a group that we need to interact with. And then minimum considerations, they talk about you don't even get to put a project in through this process anyway if you don't kind of walk through these considerations, like how it addresses the plan's goals and objectives related to the resource management strategies that you're struggling with, technical feasibility, specific. Now, all projects don't have to have all of these, but
what's
economic.
DMC?
Disadvantaged communities.
Okay.
If it's an area that is used by disadvantaged communities for recreation or learning or outdoor education, that's definitely an attribute that you want to emphasize.
So, okay, we're talking about projects that connect with a Prop 84 funded project, but not all of our projects will really fit there, to be honest with you. I think we're going to come up with other ones. I think the benefit of going through this exercise is to identify what I call problems, because I think projects are really problems in a big way. And so, it's not completely decided. What we may come up with, I don't know, let's just say 100 projects between all the work groups and the public. The public's going to have a chance to do them too. It's not decided whether we're going to prioritize those, or are we going to prioritize those with the work?
There has to be a list of prioritized projects, and then there can also be a list of projects that are maybe at the conceptual level or not quite ready to be included in the prioritized list that can be tracked through the program.
So what that means to me is get your projects together, because if this whole process, and when you look at this manual that we got from Katie Burdick, there's some real tips on how to basically put together a project, i.e. a funding opportunity. So I kind of want to limit it totally to Prop 84, even though that's our focus for the water plan, in developing conceptual projects too.
Well, and again, some of the other parts of
I'm
the
afraid we'll miss something in
water
those.
bond are way beyond the money that is allocated to IRWM.
So a couple thoughts relative to this as we're getting down into the projects of other activities that are going on that relate. First of all, you have the Plymouth County Fire Safe Council that's focused on the wildland urban interface and the WOO. So from the perspective of the Fire Safe Council and a priority for landowners, whether it be the small, non-industrial, or the industrial, where we can pull together projects that address communities and community resilience from wildfire and also demonstrate the enhancement to water. That would be something that we collectively need to pull together in terms of a process of planning and figuring out those projects. Building upon that, each March for the past 4 years, the Plymouth County Fire Safe Council has invited landowners to come in and let us know where you're planning to be this next year, so that we can pull together a map that then we can begin to promote our projects and also facilitate a dialogue about those projects as well, and see where are our opportunities in the wildland urban interface. So to me, that feeds into this process. It gives us multiple benefits beyond just water, but it's also going to be clear that if we're avoiding wildfires such as Angora or weed or whatever in a wildland urban interface, it gives us that much greater priority.
Strengthens that.
Yeah. And then the other effort that's going on that's also associated with the Fire Safe Council is a collaborative landscape forest restoration act endeavor in partnership with the Plymouth National Forest, and working closely with both Ryan and Nancy and Rachel here, who's worked on this project. Last week in the paper, you may have noticed that we had an advertisement of a series of meetings that are happening beginning February 11th. And then every Wednesday thereafter, starting in Quincy, Portola, Greenville, and Chester, the notion being to pull together people who want to be engaged more closely on national forests, but not looking beyond the private land opportunities to help address forest restoration. And certainly that's what this is about as well. So those are other initiatives that relate to this as we begin to talk project specifics. And all of the issues that we're about to identify, as well as the various RMS strategies.
Hence that word that's really bashing around the state, integration.
Yeah.
Okay, well then you're kind of ahead of this presentation already, but we'll go through it. And here's the project development flow chart. And again, UMA will be providing the regional management group with some final documents so we can start that process. Kind of, yeah?
So we'll be emailing out the draft forms, the forms that have been drafted for the project solicitation. We'll be emailing those to all the work group members so that you all can have a chance to provide some feedback on those forms before they're taken to the management group for approval at the next meeting, which is in March. So Leah will be sending those out and giving some guidelines as far as when we need the feedback by, but it's an opportunity to look at the forms, and if you have any questions about them or they don't seem clear, that would be the time to provide the feedback.
Okay, so there's a form you're going to get. The management group wanted UMA to develop the form.
Well, it's been developed, so it'll just be in the next week or two probably.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm maybe out of line here, because I was late. It seems to me like there's a lot of overlap in these groups. So what happens if we're doing one thing and another group's doing the other thing on the same thing?
Well, there's integrated.
Hopefully we're communicating and helping each other instead of competing for funds or not helping each other out, and we can accomplish more goals that are on each other's lists.
There's a couple of meetings where we get together.
There's an integration meeting where we actually dig into these projects and we find out if there's any overlap, are they contradicting each other, are they undoing each other, are they helping each other?
I do understand your integration, and I think that's a wonderful thing, and yes, it's important under the law. In all of the places that I've been where this has been done, if the integration doesn't happen at the goals level, or the issues level, it is a bloody war at the other end. Because people buy into things without understanding how they affect something else.
Yeah.
And you run into a roadblock at the integration level. I'm just looking at the two that jump off the chart here. Floodplains, meadows, water bodies management, and uplands and forest management. I don't know how you can divide those two.
How you can what, Michael?
Divide those two.
Yeah.
Well, as chair of the watershed floodplains, and that's why I nominated Mike to be the chairman of the.
Good for you. Okay, well, maybe it just works here because we all know each other so well. But I'm taking advice from my expert to my right, and it just seems to me that everything we want to do, this other group wants to do too. And so I'm trying to figure out whether it would be better off having a couple of joint meetings and then have some. I don't know. And I'm sorry I was late.
Well, we hadn't gotten to that.
We're trying to figure out what the groundwater law means in my real life.
Yeah.
Can I ask for some clarification? Did I hear Uma say earlier that only one group would be charged with any one of these strategies?
Well, they were leaning that way.
I hope we didn't hear that.
Well, that's why I want clarification.
The idea would be that at least one group is tasked with one of the management strategies, so that no management strategies that are applicable to the region slip through the cracks. That's the intent of that.
And remember too that the RMG has to approve the, there could be, Mike and I could put in the same kind of a proposal, but then the RMG is going to decide who's going to do what. There is something in the system that does take care of that issue, actually.
The RMG.
So the management group, at the next meeting, will take this list of the priorities, prioritized RMS, take this to the management group, and they're going to review it. And if they have concerns about the selections or the holes are identified, then they're going to address those at that time.
But I think Michael might be talking more about, or less about holes than about the overlap problem.
Right. This is not a hole.
No, understood. So that's definitely a concern that we can bring forward to the management group for them to consider. And that's something that the work group chairs can also bring forward at the meeting, because at the beginning of each management group meeting, the work groups all give updates to the management group, kind of the liaison between the work group and the management group. And I think that would be appropriate to bring forward.
Well, I have a little suggestion. I don't know how good it is, but the Forest Service puts out a plan of work on what projects it's going to do for the next couple of years, and that certainly would be a starting point to think what are the conceptual projects that we want to use some of this money for. Similarly, the Fire Safety Council has a list of projects in the pipeline. They would be as part of the baseline that all committees understand going into it. are things that are already in the works. If you hate them, tell us about it right now. It has to go with that.
Well, on your comment about the holes too, there's a couple of people in that RMG that I know for sure are gonna look at this stuff, and if there's holes, they're gonna bring them up.
So, one of the things I saw
That's gonna happen.
is we started with the municipal services work group. That was the first meeting. And then we had the floodplains and meadows group, and this room was packed. And there were a lot of ranchers in this room. Okay? And that might be because of history, that they all flooded into this room. And then when we got to the ag meeting, there weren't so many people in the room. And the ag people were all going, we're going to talk to our fellow ag people. We want to get them into the room. I think that that particular work group got flooded because it was the first chance to try to look at what this, I'm going to use the word, the restoration practices that have been going on for a while. And some of them were there because of past concerns, some of them there were future concerns. And it was my opinion that a lot of those maybe should have been at the ag work group rather than the metals restoration group, just so you know. And I'm seeing Dan shake his head. I think they were all of them. So I did see that. What I'm seeing right now is a pretty good representation of the uplands and forests, but that recognition that it does bleed over into these other areas. And we have to sort that out. They chose a lot to work on, and Terry and I were sitting next to each other going, whoa, look at this. But I kept it in my mind going, well, this is a new process. This was a chance for a lot of people to enter into an area that had somewhat been controversial in the past, and that I think we're going to see maybe a reduction in the number of folks that some of those will shift over to the ag. And I found it interesting today that you got into those forest management ones at the last, and it was resounding, yeah. And you are looking at that duplicity with the other groups. It's something that has to be sorted out. But I think right now, people are involved to the point where they want to look at those things no matter what group they're in. And that has to be, we have to use the management group to help us do that in a way that people are still satisfied that they're working on something they feel is productive. Yes?
Just looking at the agricultural land stewardship and the floodplain and meadows focus, I really wonder, I know politically it'd be stickier, but why is the agriculture in the watershed is in the meadows? Right. That's it. It's not going on in the mountains, it's not going on in the city. So why do we have a separate work group for ag when really they're managing the meadows?
This came up when we were working through the grant agreement with the Department of Water Resources. And the decision at that time was that in the floodplains, meadows, and water bodies, people aren't thinking about that. That's our lakes. That's the kayakers. That's the flood flows in the canyon for whitewater releases. There's a whole nother arena that's related to water-based recreation that ag was like, we are absolutely not interested in spending time on that issue. And that was a big reason that it got separated out, because water-based recreation is not a big priority for ag.
But were they present at the meadows?
Pardon?
But they may not have been outreach to.
Well, no, we haven't. You can see we all need to outreach more, and those people are all preoccupied with the FERC, the Federal Regulatory Energy Regulatory Processes. But they are aware of this and they want to participate, but we haven't done the focused outreach to them that we need to do. But that was going back to the thinking of how did it get separated out. It was that group, among most things, that really wanted to pay attention to that. The other one was fish passage, which goes across a lot of lands, and it has a lot to do with roads and culverts and all that sort of thing, and ag wasn't sure they wanted to spend a lot of time on fish passage. So I'm just saying that was the history of it. We could always, this is going to evolve as it evolves.
Most ag do in the meadow, but not all meadows are ag.
And the land trust is a big player as well. And, you know, there's just a lot. It just wasn't so easy to lump it all and get anywhere, really. We're hoping that in all these processes, we start pulling things together and we see the overlap. But we didn't want to prejudge it, you know, just...
Can I make a comment? I have a question for Randy. Randy, I agree with your comment about the ag group, maybe, you know, more people. Is someone going to talk to them, or now that more people have the offices in a one-time meeting in all the communities?
Yeah.
Who might that? And I'm looking at you.
Well, and that's something that probably Terry and I should talk about, and maybe get Holly Foster involved with.
Raise your hand higher.
I'm just waiting for an opportunity to say that.
No, we're trying.
So I can see it.
What about PG&E? Are they involved in all these groups?
PG&E, I've been really reaching towards them. They're an interesting entity. Of course, they're huge, but in a narrow way. You know, they have the lakes that they have, and then they have those conditions in the rivers that they have to meet.
And some timberlands.
Yeah,
I think they're a big player.
Gary Freeman is the one that brought up that the timberlands is where the water went. Okay, he was the PG&E guy that started going, that's what's changed in this system over the last years since the 60s. Ag hasn't changed, municipal. It's the stocking of the forest that has really been the big change that could explain the reduction in stream flow. And that's why I gave you that study to look at. But when you ask them how they want to be involved, it's going to probably be a review and comment. They're not thrilled with clouds getting in a big debate about cloud seeding. They're not thrilled with telling water managers how to do their job, or timber people how to do their job. They're not thrilled about dealing with the Forest Service, who they've used a regulator, or Ben, or all these, you know, so I'm not, this is all a way to say I've made the outreach.
PG&E does have foresters.
Well,
They do.
Their comment the other day when I talked to someone was, we're still looking at that.
Yeah, so all I can say is they haven't participated in other IRWMs. They refused. So the fact that they're thinking about it gives me great hope, but I don't know how much hope.
If we can get them to the table, that's going to be critical, because a lot of the projects, at least I'm a forester, so what I'm envisioning is some thinning projects to store the water up on the hill. They don't get that connection.
Their hydrographers do.
Not officially ready to get that connection.
Well, it's because they're compartmentalized.
Right.
And no one wants to think about the big picture. But if we could get them involved in it and tell them that they need to start encouraging biomass energy, that this would solve a lot of the problem.
All right, you guys, I'm throwing it back on you. I want them in the room bad. And I spent a lot of time on the phone trying to get there from here. I didn't get a no, but I didn't get a yes.
So I'm going to announce a meeting, and it's going to conflict with your collaborative forest meeting, Mike. On February 11th, PG&E is going to have a meeting on the 2105 water quality certification that the water board's doing. And we've asked the water board staff, Peter Barnes, to also come to that meeting and take public comment on the draft EIR. That's going to be on February 11th in Chester.
What time?
Right now it's 6 o'clock. Some of the details haven't been worked out. But that meeting date's I think is getting set. That's the meeting that PG&E said that they could participate in.
So that's our chance to maybe get some people in the hall, although they'll be, you know, focused on the thermal curtains and all those kinds of things.
One of the things I'm pointing out is PG&E is a little preoccupied right now with 2105 water quality certification for the their upper facilities on the North Fork.
Michael.
One of the ways to get PG&E's attention is to go to the PUC and lay out what you're trying to do. The PUC has people who are very interested in carrying out the governor's plan. The person's in charge of appointment because he and PV are old buddies. So you can actually probably get PG&E to come up with a coherent policy by suggesting to the PUC that this is a process that all of their regulated private industries ought to be involved in.
The,
Throughout California.
implementing the governor's water action plan? Okay, so if as a first step, we ought to get it up on the website. The governor's water action plan, it came out last year, year before last year, was that last year?
Yeah, it was actually.
Yeah.
And it talks a lot about how uplands and forests affect floodplain, meadows, and water bodies.
As does the California water plan. I mean, they did an extraordinary job for forests in the California water plan.
And it's a way to get, PG&E's like anybody else. They've got an inbox that's 12 feet higher than their outbox. And you pretty much have to get a red star put on it to get them to work on it. And a lower court order. So let's start with the PUC red star. Because it makes very little sense. I don't know how you actually operate floodplains, meadows, water bodies in the North Fork of the Feather River without the Pacific Graph Consortium.
Well, so this sounds like a good interregional activity that we can
One
undertake.
other possibility on PG&E, I agree with Michael's characterization and how important their role is the Stewardship Council, it maybe is a surrogate for PG&E in some way, because they've acted like that in some cases. That's good.
Okay, good. This is exciting.
And you know those people.
Yes, I do.
I can't find it, but I'm looking at the grant application when they created this.
We said we'd outreach. We didn't say we'd be successful.
We had a lot more working groups and we had a lot more working group meetings. Eventually, Leah and I concluded there was too much.
Well, we got a lot less money too.
And we got less money to do it, but it's in this and it's been scrambled because I've opened it up too many times. But we have a lot more working groups and meetings associated.
But this is strategic.
We boiled it down to the 4 that we're dealing with today. And I do think we need to think about, Terry, about what we saw. But go through that list of the first Meadows meeting and go, well, who do we have? This rancher, this rancher, this rancher. Maybe they should be more sitting in these meetings. Because everybody volunteers to go to the meetings. Maybe some of that can happen. And I think, Dan, I agree. It was their first shot at this thing, and they all came.
Well, I also think I make the comment they were there to stop certain things from happening they thought might happen.
Right.
In that.
Well, I agree.
Some of the comments I heard at the meeting too, I think it would be a natural thing for them to move over to the ag group because they found out in the discussions that that's where they really belong.
Right.
Maybe that's just the organic, natural process.
Yeah.
All right, so we have another action item. We're going to think about how to get PG&E in the room. And maybe we'll start with a meeting at Almanor as a first chance and keep working on that. And it would be wonderful to get here because they're going to be critical.
Because right now, Supervisor Thrall does have a good enough relationship with them that they're accommodating her on this meeting. Leah and I and Supervisor Thrall, was it last week, we were in Sacramento meeting with the Water Board on the draft EIR. I don't know how many, it must have been a dozen PG&E staff in there. And it's occupied a lot of my time recently because we have until March 26th.
Okay, but
to comment
it's
on.
1:25. Can I finish?
Sure.
These guys out of here. Okay. All right. So here's the project development. There's going to be 2 big public hearings once we have this project package together, and there's going to be a project prioritization workshop, and then we're going to have a work group integration workshop, and May and June is where this thing is really going to start coming together for the whole input of projects. And then we have a project development timeline that's so small you can't read it, but you can look at it at your leisure. But really, we're trying to get by September to have priority projects identified. So that's going to be kind of a charge to get there from here. So these projects that you have ready to go, those are obviously ones we ought to be looking at early, instead of making them up whole cloth. And the project development manual, this is in your packet, and for the IRWM fund out of the bond, this is the kind of drill you have to go through. And thankfully, for a lot of the work that we're interested in, it's going through other chapters of the water bond, and it'll be more like with those of you who've been in watershed management for a long time and habitat improvement. A lot of those funds used to come out of the Water Board or Department of Fish and Wildlife or the Wildlife Conservation Board. Their procedures were a lot simpler. And so as these funds get allocated, there was a handout about the governor's proposal for what to release first out of the bond this next year, and it's a lot of that in-stream flow habitat and all the water quality and drought proofing and all that sort of stuff. Those will come through different agencies, and we'll keep you appraised of what those requirements are like, timetables, as those things start rolling out. And so, and their procedures are going to be different. And hopefully, this is as bad as it gets, this development thing in the back. So I'm hoping that there are other avenues for funding under the water bond. They all come back to this plan. You have to show that you thought this through and you connected to all the issues and connected with each other and all that. But the actual application procedure might look different depending on who's putting out the proposals or requests for proposals. Did I make sense?
What is the requirement in the project development for a spatial representation of where the project is? Because I'm thinking that if we spatially discover, during one of these integration meetings that we have a forest thinning project that's in the same sub-watershed as a meadow restoration project, and it might have a better chance of success if it was made into one project, the way to identify that is going to be being able to look at them spatially.
Yeah, there'll be a location as part of the form we put together. There'll be a way on the website for people to get their project on a map.
You'll see that when he was showing those things, you'll see those little teardrop will be showing up for these projects. And we're asking people to go through areas and start drawing. And he said graffiti these things. They're not sacred.
We're hoping to get a lot of the ideas on the maps.
So that they will be spatially. And some of these treatments in different zones of the watershed that might have a different output. We're kind of looking for those kinds of things as well. So I hope that will come through the process, but this is where the coordinators working together and us being in communication with you, hopefully we'll start flagging those for you as we move into this process.
Lee, I had a question on the applications and how far they've gotten with their thinking. Some applications to the state demand that you have all your environmental work done before they commit any money. Some don't. Where does this fit in that continuum?
Well, for the Prop 84, you had to have everything done before you submitted, pretty much, or done by the time they were going to award the money. And the Prop 1, this new bond, they haven't come out with anything yet. And so we'll start seeing stuff, I think, this summer.
Okay.
And then we can even comment on it. So, hopefully we'll be interacting with this process as well as just receiving what it gives us.
That's always a problem.
Yeah.
We want you to spend $5,000 on environmental review to put the application together.
Well,
or they punt it down the line to somebody else. If it's a state agency distributing money, they're ultimately the one responsible for CEQA, and they like to punt it down the line. It's a good point to bring up, John, because I know Jonathan, who has had to leave, has dealt with that a lot.
So this triggered a thought for me that we need to be giving some thought to in Plymouth County. And that is one of the new grant programs that CAL FIRE will be rolling out here shortly is what's called a programmatic timber harvest, or EIR, programmatic timber EIR. And it has to be managed through a local entity such as planning, such that it makes the permitting process associated with projects such as we're talking here, or field reduction, which has always been my interest in doing that. So we need to be paying attention to that opportunity. It hasn't come out yet, but it is currently on the CAL FIRE site as a eventual grant opportunity.
For a programmatic
timber EIR. At this point in California, there are only 3 So we're going to be learning from those, and I expect that the Northern California Society of American Foresters will be doing a webinar on that process so that we can better understand.
You probably should keep me in the loop.
Yeah, can you email us when that?
And specifically, that's just for private.
Whether I like it or not,
Yes.
I'm the county CEQA guy.
Well, but
on the lower level, pending appeal to the Board of Supervisors.
And you didn't know that when you took the job as planning director?
But we need to.
Actually, planning departments are usually in that role, Michael, so I did know it. And I did know that the planning commission has virtually no role in that at this time, even in statute here. That is the reality. So please keep me in the loop because, because if it's on private lands in the county and there's that kind of thing, and if the county's the lead agency, that's the question.
Well, we need to lay that foundation to see if that's where we want to go.
Right.
That's exciting.
That's always an interesting conversation on lead agency. But I actually had the Fire Safe Council in Lassen County on a Lassen County plan want me to sign off on a CEQA for a Sierra Nevada Conservancy grant, which I immediately said, I don't have jurisdiction. I can't do that. I made a phone call to Scott Morgan at the State Clearinghouse going, darn those state agencies, they like to punt it down the line. If they're the ones with the money, they're the ones that can, the lead agency, but they set it all up to shift it down the line.
Well, that'd be interesting too with the Sierra Conservancy new rollout that Jonathan was talking about, and some of you are already participating. Maybe that's something that they should consider as well.
And I know that was a role the planning department fulfilled in the federal procurement process, is the CEQA side. It was a key role in that process.
And extremely well done.
Okay, you guys.
Okay.
I know you want to
We're
bring
gonna
up
wrap
dinner,
this up.
but okay. So here's the development manual. We'll keep you posted. Yeah, thank God for the pizza. Okay. Call for studies. We already went through that. UMA's got to write this regional description because the projects have to be addressed in it, and that's usually a huge part of the plan, 50 to 100 pages, something like that. So we get to look at that, but the more information we can get her, the better it's going to be.
There's a link on the website, contact us link. That's the best place to send things until we have the document set up.
Okay, so the last task is when are we going to meet again, folks? We have to meet before the regional water management group meets at the end of March. I don't want to be behind like we were today. And so it's somewhere between now and say the middle of March that we would probably be meeting again.
I would suggest after March 4th, which is our last CFLR public outreach meeting, because that would give us opportunity to bring some input into where people may be going with projects that we could bring into what you're doing.
What do folks think about that?
Yeah, that's a beginning deadline.
So, yeah, that's fine with me.
How about the 18th?
What day is it?
March.
What is it?
Wednesday.
Are Wednesdays good for you? Are there days that are better or worse, middle?
Don't we want to have a little more
participation in this? You guys,
It's February. Those are February meetings, aren't they? Aren't you guys doing February? So we're not going to conflict with them.
February 13th.
So,
When are the other groups meeting so that maybe we could have them in 2 or 3 days as a unit and not cause everybody to have whole blocks of time that they have to.
The ag group is meeting March 11th.
so that would fit into what you were saying after that. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you got to give only time to put the information that you generate into the agenda for the RFP.
I almost would rather get it closer to the end of February.
Yeah.
So, mainly thinking, okay, so we're going to go through this process of already via online prioritizing and identifying issues. So we need to get together in time to go through that and then have enough time to be able to prepare that so that we can present it for the larger group several weeks later. So you as staff need to have time to do both of those tasks.
And we can talk with you, Rachel, and we could update our thinking as we
Last
went.
week of February sometime?
How about the 26th?
That might be a little bit of a tough week for, Brian, I don't know what your schedule is, but it's a tough week for me.
It's a big meeting, Chico State.
Yeah, it's a tough week.
Last week
The last week of February.
How about the,
That same week of the ag work group would be, give plenty of time for us to get stuff into the management group.
So can we kick back to March, early March? Is that okay? Does that work for you guys, Heather? Then?
Early March is good.
Yeah, early March, fine.
then March 5th?
March 5th, going gone?
Thursday.
How's March 5th work, guys?
Does that give you the time?
Oh, Oma, aren't you going to say,
Everything.
well, it doesn't matter.
That's not that big.
So you guys, March 5th is good for you?
There's one 9 o'clock meeting in the morning that, if we meet at that same time at 10:30 ballpark, or just shift the whole thing to the afternoon so it doesn't cost lunch, that would work.
Okay, so we have a day, March 5th, right?
5th.
Would you like to do morning or afternoon, or what works for you guys?
Morning.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the same schedule we did today? And have some lunch?
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, I think the lunch helps. I'm happy to do the lunch if you do the thing.
So do one do a 10 to 1 o'clock?
Does the 10 to 1 on March 5th sound okay to everybody? Great.
Good?
Okay.
No? It's not good?
No.
CLFA annual conference?
I don't think I'm going.
Well, we want you there.
I mean, you're not gonna pick a day that everybody can do, so just pick a day.
John,
No, this is the forest group, we ought to have key forestry players.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
And
yeah,
you want
so,
to come to the meeting.
Yeah.
so what about the 6th? The 6th, no, how long can
No,
you be
that's that
gone?
week.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
How about the 12th?
12th work.
March 12th. Going, on?
12 does not work for me, Brian, what about you?
The 12th is the Plymouth County Fire Safety Council.
How about the 13th?
The 13th.
We're back to the
Hold on.
13th, which everybody.
We can go the afternoon.
Why didn't
Well,
you-
Afternoon of the 12th?
It's not a Thursday.
Well, that's what we did.
It is Thursday. Thursday as well.
Because are you on Friday?
Right there.
No, yeah, but it's
Something wrong with that?
9th or 10th? 10th is a board day, so that makes me suspect, but 9th or the 13th?
9th or 13th, what's better?
13th.
Okay.
13th, going,
Morning,
gone.
afternoon,
March.
10 to 1.
10 to 1, okay, 13th.
Yes. All right, you guys are liberated. Thank you so much.
We're done, thank you.
Did we say PM or AM?
10 to 1.
Thursday also.
That,